If you've never added logos to a model, created symbols, or textured anything in Blender procedurally, then this tutorial will increase your skills tremendously. You'll learn how to make everything from start to finish yourself, but it's also possible to get these images for free on Patreon or Gumroad. Link is in the description. Subscribe to follow this free course, and let's get started straight away. So right now I'm picking up where we left off. I'm going to delete the camera for now because we do not need it. I will also remove the reference images. They are right over here, and I will just turn them off like this. So in order to see what we are doing, we can go to the viewport shading mode right over here, and now we get a good idea of what we must do. So I'm going to start with the body first. I'm going to drag this up and go over to the shader editor, click on new, and right now we have a principled BSDF. I'm going to turn back on one of the reference images just so we can see what it looks like, and now I'm going to the principled BSDF, increase the metallic. Now this is already starting to look like the material that we need. However, if you look closely, you can see that there's a kind of texture right here with all these lines, and we are going to replicate that. So the way I'm going to do it is by bringing in a noise texture like this, pressing on Ctrl T to get our texture coordinate nodes, and we're going to have to use the UV for this one. I'm going to plug the noise texture into the roughness, and then I'll hold Shift and Ctrl and click on the noise texture just to see what it looks like. Well, there's not much going on, and first of all we have to unwrap the UVs. So I'm going into edit mode, press A, U, and unwrap cylinder projection. And you can already see that we are starting to get the type of result that we're after, but it's not entirely what we want it to be yet. So the way to fix that is by going over into the mapping node, in the scale, and increase the Y. And now it will make these lines that we want. We can also play around with the X, and I wouldn't stretch it out like this because I think there is some random variation in it. So I'm going to turn it up to 1.25. Then I will add in a color ramp, plug it right in between, and let's see what it looks like. Now it's a bit too much, and I don't think we have enough lines. So I'm going to increase the Y even more until we are at something like this, maybe 108. And it's not entirely reflective, so we should probably decrease the black color to something like a grayish tone somewhere over here in the middle. And the white can also be brought down just a little bit, like this. And now we're starting to reach the effect that we're after. I'm going to increase the base color to a pure white, like so. And now we need to bring in a bump map. So over here I will drag the vector, and we can select something. You can type bump and choose the height and plug it in the normal. Now it will be a bit too much. I'm going to decrease the strength all the way to a very low number, maybe even something like 0.033. And this is starting to look like the material over here. Increase the Y, so I'm going to set it to 150. I still think it's a bit too reflective, so I'm going to increase this color just a bit more until it's really subtle, just like over here. Given the fact that it's a pretty glossy material, it will be dependent on the lighting that we use, how it will look. Let's add another noise texture. Let's add a mix color node, plug it right in here, plug this vector into B, and now we have some variation on our material. But once again, we do not want those black parts, so I'm going to bring in a color ramp, turn this black all the way up, like right over here, and the white can be brought down just a little bit as well. And the effect is subtle, but it's there, and it makes it look just a little bit more real. Now for the next material, we are going to make this black part. So I'm going to click on tab, make a new material, and I am going to turn off the subdivision surface modifier for now. And right over here, we have this line. I'm going to select it. It's the uttermost bottom line. It's tucked away all the way in the inside. But I'm going to hold Alt, click on the faces, and then we have that line selected. Then I will press on Ctrl plus a couple of times until we get everything that should be black. So that includes this part and this part. Now I will assign this material, assign. I will turn the subdivision back on, and we can change this color to black. Now this doesn't look very good yet, and the reason for it is that it's stretching it because of the subdivision. Click on tab, select the outer ring, holding Alt and Shift, and clicking on these lines. Then press Shift and E and increase the crease. And now this is a pretty good circle. We can do the same for the inside of this part as well, like this. This material is not finished yet. It looks too 3D. So what we are going to do, increase the roughness a bit, and now I'm going to add in a Voronoi texture. I'm going to press on Ctrl T and plug the object into the vector. Then I will take the distance and add it to another bump height. Bump in the normal. We can go to F1 in the Voronoi texture and select distance to edge. And now I will increase the scale to something very high, 200. Then I will decrease the strength, and as you can see, this already looks a bit better, and we worked on it just a bit more. Maybe decrease the strength ever so slightly. I'm going to set it to 0.05. And now it's better than just a black texture. We can also apply the black texture to this part. Go over here, click on new, and select the black texture from this tab. I'm going to call it black plastic. And I will call this one brushed metal. We can also select the top part. Let's click on the dash icon, so we separate this object from the rest. And now we'll select the middle part, Ctrl plus, Ctrl plus, Ctrl plus, Ctrl plus, until we are all the way over here. Then I will apply the black plastic to it. As you can see, it's kind of overlapping with the other texture, and we have to do the same trick that we did before. Just select this line, this entire edge, Shift E, and make this straight. And now everything should work out fine. Let's click on Dash again. Now you can already see that this is starting to look like the texture that we want it to be, but we're not there yet. Let's click on this material first. Press New, go to Transmission, increase the weight and decrease the roughness. Now this will not be visible in the viewport shading, but once we go over to the rendered view, you will be able to see that this is a glass material. I will also take the top part and make it that black material once again, black plastic. Then I will select this and give it the glass material by clicking on this with Shift, going over here, copy material to select it. Now one thing you might notice is that this button right here has a very specific pattern for its roughness, and we cannot replicate that in any way except for the method that I'm about to show you. So I will make a new material, go over here and assign this to this new material. This new material can be made the brush metal. So I'm going to select brush metal and then right over here copy the material. And now we copied the material of the brush metal, but it's only operating on this button. Let's delete all of this, then press Shift A, gradient, add a gradient texture. We're going to set it to radial, plug it in here, factor into the roughness. And we can't see anything as of yet, and the reason for it is that it's all stretched out because of this mapping node. I'm going to click on those two, set it to 1, and you already saw a color shift, but nothing really happened. It's kind of skewed over to one side. So we have to select all of this, minus 0.5. And now you can actually see something happening. In order to get this texture to look like this texture, we can add a wave texture right here. But it's still not the way that we want it to look. And the reason for it is that we unwrapped it using the cylinder projection. So I'm going into edit mode, U, unwrap. And now it will unwrap basically this entire plane as we see it. And now we already start to get this type of result. But the scale is too much. So I'm going to set it to 1. And now it's too uniform. So I'm going to increase the distortion till we get something that looks like our reference image. We can play around with the scale, and now this looks pretty good, but it's too reflective once again. So I'm going to add a color ramp, turn the black values up a notch, like so, and turn the white a bit down. And now we get this effect. You can change it around by playing with the phase offset, if you want it to look any different than it does right now. So that's a cool little trick that you can use in order to fake a reflection that otherwise would not happen in your actual model. So let's hide the glass for now and go over to this texture. This should be black. So I'm going to select this one, black plastic. Then I will go over here and give it a new material, new, increase the metallic, decrease the roughness. We can now decrease the base color to a bit more of a grayish tone. This should work out fine for what we are trying to do. So let's add an HDRI for now. You can already see that this is starting to look like a pretty good blender. But we are missing a crucial part. We are missing the text. And this really adds a lot to the entire texture. Now I'm not going to make this in Blender. We are actually going to make it in Davinci Resolve. The steps will be applicable to any program that you use, be it Paint or Photoshop or whatever, so you can follow along with the tutorial just fine. If you do not want to do this, you can also go over to my Patreon, and for free you will find the textures over there to download and follow the rest of this tutorial. I will place a timestamp right here so you can go over to the next part where we actually add the text to the materials if you do not want to make them yourselves in Davinci Resolve. However, I do recommend following this process so you actually know how to do it yourself once you are confronted with it in another project. So I'm going to bring in this image, and now we can see what's going on. Now there's two methods of extraction. In this case, this image quality is very low. You could try upresing it in AI, but I find that text upres in AI is not the best yet. It works better for pictures. So let's go over to Fusion, right over here, and add a text plus, right over here. Connect the text plus to the square and connect it to the media out. And now we have some text right over here. So let's type Pro Blend. And basically, we kind of want to make it look like this. So I'm already seeing that it's italic, like so. And now we can go over to the fonts and find something that looks like the original that we want to use. So I've selected Trebuchet MS, which is probably a Microsoft font, so you should have it. Now what we can see is that this blend is a different font type than this one. So this one is not bold. And the way to fix that is to go over here, right mouse click and select character level styling. Then in the modifiers right next to tools, we can select this part in our image, like so. Go over here and set it to italic. I still think it's a bit too thick, so maybe we can even use a different font for this. Maybe this one. Segu UI. And now we have kind of recreated what this looks like. We can also have this crush right over there. Let's copy this text, Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, bring it over here and type crush right over here. Bring it down just a bit, make it smaller because it is way smaller. It's actually just as big as the Pro. And this is a trick that's being used in text often, is that you make the lines of the text align. So I'm going right over here and make sure that we have that as well. Increase it until it is just as big as Pro. And I will select Segui UI and make it semi-light italic. And I want these to be able to move together. I'm going to drag this upwards, click on this one, Shift space, multi-merge, then drag this one into the multi-merge, disconnect it from this merge node and delete this merge node. So right now, if we add a transform node after this one, we can increase the scale or move it around and everything is together. Now our original image was pretty low resolution, as you can see, 384 by 461. And I'm going to take this background node, go into image, auto resolution, change this to 1080 by 1080. And now we must change the size of the text accordingly. It is actually better to do it in the text itself instead of in the transform node. I will add a background node. I'm going to select this one, copy it, paste it right over here. And now we'll take a circle, press on 1, set this to white, bring the circle into the background, duplicate the circle, set it to subtract, and increase the border width, or decrease the border width. Now there's another circle right in here, so we're going to recreate that as well. I'm going to take this circle, copy it, and bring it in here, decrease the border width, and move this one towards the side, and increase it until it somewhat looks like what we are after. And now we have to remake this entire shape. Let's go over here, select the polygon tool, let's make the shape, drag it in here, subtract and increase the size of this. Now we also need a circle in this side. So take the circle once again, copy it, paste it, decrease the border width, decrease the size of the circle and bring it in the inside, like so. Now we also need those little dots. So let's just take this, set it to subtract and make these dots by hand, like so. Do the same again, replace it, place it over there, maybe rotate it. And now we've recreated this little logo. It's not entirely perfect, but I think it will be fine for what we are trying to do. So let's add a text plus, drag it over here. Let's go to layout and type circle. Now go to text, type P space off, on, min. Let's increase the size of this. Now we also need the dots. So let's add a background, take this one, copy it, make it wide, right over there. Take this, add a circle, small dot, bring it right over there. Now let's add a duplicate. We need 10 copies. This requires some fiddling around in order to get it right. And now we've got this texture as well. So what we need are some ice cubes. We're going to make that right now. Take the background node, Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, add it right over here. Take this square, bring it right over there, make it smaller, round the edges by increasing the corner radius, and take this same square, copy it, paste it, subtract it, increase or decrease the border width. Now we can take this square once again, Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V right over there, decrease the border width until it fits right in there. Take it again, Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, subtract, and now move it towards this side until we get this kind of shape. Add a transform, decrease the size, copy all of this, paste it once more, plug it in here, take the transform, bring this one over there, it's a bit smaller than the other ones, and take this one and rotate it, and now we've got our little ice cubes as well. And now finally we only need Phillips. So now we have recreated every part of the texture in Davinci Resolve using some unorthodox methods. I hope you learned a lot and that you can use this in future projects to create whatever shape you like. I'm going to save this as a black and white image because we are going to use this in Blender as an alpha mask, and I'm going to show you how to do it right now. So right now I'm back in Blender and we can add our image textures the way we like. So I'm going over here and looking at this. I want to add this image to our material, but I actually want to do it separately so I have a little bit more control. It is possible to use a mix node, but in many cases, these type of letters are not baked into the material itself, but it's just kind of a sticker that's put on it and you want to give it its own material. So I like to do it by separating it from the original texture so we have some more control. Now I'm going to add a principled BSDF like this, bring it over here, take this to the side, add an image texture as well, image texture, and open the texture that we've just created. I'm going to press Ctrl-T, and I will delete the texture coordinate because I want to give it its own coordinates. So go over here to the Data Object Properties tab, Go to UV maps, click on plus, and then select this button. And now we have a new UV map. I'm going to call it text. Over here in the shader editor, Shift A, UV map, and select text. Plug the text into the vector. Now I will select both principal BSDFs, press Ctrl 0, and you can already see that our texture is being mixed. So if I place it right over here on 1, it will be this texture, and on 0, it will be this texture. So now we need to drive the mask of this, so we only have this texture on our text. So if I plug the color into the vector, we can see that the text is being applied to our texture, but it's not entirely correct. Why? Well, this UV map that we just created doesn't have any UVs as of yet. So I'm going to select this part right over here, press U, and unwrap. As we can see, it's turned inside out, so it's taking our black texture instead of our white texture for the text. What I'm going to do is simply bring in an invert color node, drag it right in here, and now our black text will be back while we have the white text right over here. Now we need to change the UVs, obviously. Let's go over here, UV editor, select this, R90, straighten it out by selecting this line, SY0, SY0. Select all of this, select this line, SX0, SX0. Do the same for this one, SX0, SX0, and SX0. And now this should work fine. I'm going to select all of this by pressing A, right mouse click, and mirror it on the x-axis. And now the text will be in the correct position. So let's scale it down. I don't know how big it was. I think something like this. I will place it right over here. Let's see in the reference image. But as you can see, it's also taking a part of this text, and we do not want that. So I'm going back into the shader editor, go over here, and now we need to mix this texture with another texture in order to remove this. And I also don't like that we have this D right here. So we can just fix that by selecting every other edge except this one and scaling it into the black. And now that will be removed and we only have this problem left. So let's go over here to the shader editor. And basically what we want to do is to create a square that will remove this from our object. The way to do it is by using a multiply. I'm going to add a mix color right over here. So now we only need to remove this text right here. So how am I going to do it? Well, it's quite simple actually. We have to set this mix color node to multiply. And if you watch the first free masterclass, you probably already know why we do that. And this will make a lot of sense. If you haven't watched that yet, go ahead and check it out. So first I'm going to add a gradient texture right over here. I'm going to look at its orientation, Control Shift click, and the black side is right over here. So I don't think that is correct. So I'm going to add a color ramp. My suspicion was correct. Click on the gradient texture, Control T, go to the rotation of the Y, set it to 90. And now it's coming from a different angle. So let's see what it looks like. Something like this. And it should be very, very strong. And let's drag this into the vector. Now look at the multiply and what it's doing for us. And here it has removed everything. So if we flip this is just playing around with the color ramps. And if we flip this, bam, only this remains. So if we now click on our mix shader, everything is the right texture and our text is perfectly clean right here without adding the other text as well. So that's a cool little trick that you can use in any project you like. Basically what happened is we've got this white part right over here, and this is the vector. And we have our first color, which is basically black and white, which is going into the A. And the black color is coming over here and removing this part of the text. That's basically what happened. And now we've got this text right over here. Already looks a whole lot better, a whole lot more professional. So first of all, let's make this circular texture. This black material is part of the black plastic. I'm going into this data object properties tab. I will make a new one and I will call it circle. And I will select it right here. And the material is actually the black plastic 001. So it's right over here. Let's make a new principal BSDF. Add it right here. Control 0 to make a mix shader. Bring it up here. Control T, delete the texture coordinate, UV map. Let's select our circle into the vector, and for this one we can select the texture. Now plug the color into the vector. It's inverted once again, so we can either switch those two or we can plug in an invert color node right here. Going into edit mode, select this entire loop, U, unwrap. Go to UV editor, select all, scale it down, and bring it over here. Now it's not in the correct position. Right mouse click, mirror X, and this should do the trick. RZ to rotate it should be in such a fashion so that the off is in the middle on top. Now we can also select this edge loop, Shift E, and make it sharp. It's not really noticeable, so we can just do that. Let's select this edge loop right here, Control plus, Control plus, Control plus, then deselect those. In the UV editor, let's unwrap this. Select all and scale it into a black part right over here. And now we have this part done. We can go over to the next material, shader editor. Let's go to the brush metal texture this time. I will add another principal BSDF, bring it over here, Control 0, make a new UV map, plus, I'm going to call it brand name. Select it, image texture, Control T, delete the texture coordinate, UV map, bring in the brand name, into the vector, this into the vector as well, invert the color, open up. Let's take our image texture. Let's change this color to a grayish tone. Now go over here to the UV editor. Let's only select this one, U, unwrap. And now we get this. Scale it down, let's rotate it 90 degrees, flip it on the mirror X, bring it down until we get something like this. And yes, I changed the name to Philips with an F because I might get sued if I use the brand name of Philips itself, and I do not want to risk this when I spend so much time making this free course. You can however use the Philips brand logo if you'd like. The chances of getting sued are actually very, very small. Most brands like it when you advertise them a little bit more without spending any money. But just to protect my time, I changed the P to an F, and now it's an entirely different brand called Philips. Press Ctrl I to take all of this, scale it down and place it on a black part. Now I can also see we have some stretching going on here. So let's select this edge loop, Shift E and make it straight. And now we have this brand name as well. I do think it should be in the middle of this, and that's not entirely the case right now. So I'm going to select it, bring it down until it somewhat hits the middle. And right now we have something that looks like the reference image. But we're not done yet because I forgot to place the black texture at the bottom as well. So I'm going to select all of this, holding Control, Control plus, 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 minus. Right now we have to assign the black plastic material, which we've got right over there. So now the only thing left to do is to place our ice cubes on the brushed metal. Let's go to the shader editor, right over here. And why is there no texture? I think we used the UV for this. So something went wrong. We have to select this. Just select all of this, U, unwrap, and now it should be back. Let's take the Principled BSDF once again. Principled BSDF, Control 0. Let's make a new one for this. Let's call it Ice Cubes. Ice Cubes, select it, image texture, Control T, delete this, UV map, select the ice cubes, in the vector, choose our image, plug it into the vector, invert color, make this a bit more dark as well, something like this. Let's unwrap this, unwrap, go to UV editor, let's go right over here, and I think it should be something like this. What I'm noticing is that we have to use the UV map in this one as well, the correct one. So let's add a UV map. Let's take it over here, select the original UV map and plug it into the vector. Invert the color. And now everything should work out fine. Let's make this black. And now that we've got our ice cubes, the only thing left to do is to remove this part. So I'm going to add a gradient gradient texture, make it radial, see what that looks like. Let's add a texture coordinate for this one. Set it to minus 0.5, color ramp in here from the UVs. Now let's set it to quadratic sphere, and if we bring this in and this one, make it very strong. You can also set it to constant, and now all we have to do is mix these two together. Mix color, plug it right in there. Let's use this as the vector. This should be black. See what it looks like. It's inverted. Let's take this and do it like so. Change this to multiply, and now the invert color should be on this side. Now everything works out fine. So we've got our cool ice cubes, we've got our text right here, we've got our text right here, our text right here. I can actually see that here is some part of the texture. It's not really going to be a problem, but I'm going to select it anyway. Control plus, Control plus, Control plus. Just select all of it, go to the UV editor. Let's go to the text for this one and put it in a black part. Okay, so I almost forgot a very important part of the texturing process that will increase the realism of this render even more. So what we need on this glass are some measurements. Let me show you. So right here you can see there's a little logo, but there's also some millimeters and some measurements right over here on this glass, and this will increase the realism of our render. So we are going to add that right now. So I'm going into cycles so we can see a little bit better what we are doing. Going to select the glass. And right now I will go over to the glass material, which is right here. It's the only material we've got. So I'm going over to the Object Data Properties tab, and this UV map is fine. I'm just going to call it normals. And I will also make one for the brand name. And I'm going to select the normals. So first of all, let's bring in an image texture, and let's select our image texture. You can get this one on Patreon as well, or you can make one your own. So I've got it right here. So I'm going to press Ctrl T, bring all of this to the side, delete the texture coordinate, bring in the UV map, call it normals and UV in the vector. And this one should go into the bump height right over here and plug it into the normal. Right now, nothing really happens because we have to unwrap this first. So I'm going to select these faces all the way until here. And right now we can unwrap this, unwrap, go to the UV editor, change this picture to the right one, select all, bring it over to the side, and we can already see something happening. It's a bit too broad, so I'm going to scale it on the x-axis, and it actually looks pretty good. So this is something that we wanted to have added. You can already see that this adds a lot, but it's inverted. So I'm going to mirror it on the x-axis, and now it should be fine. So the bottom one should kind of start where the handle ends. Either way, we need to add our brand name as well. So I'm going over to the shader editor, copy all of this, Shift D, change this to the brand name, go over here, select the brand name, and I'm going to place it right over here. So U, unwrap, and now we get this texture all throughout. Now we also need a new normal map. So I'm going to take this bump, duplicate it, and place it right over here. The normal should go into the normal, and we can take this and plug it into the height. Now change this image and use the one we used before. Unwrap this, and now we get some texturing going on here. So let's have a look. UV editor. It's the wrong image, so I'm going to select the right one. It is right over here. Going to select all of this, bring it down, and we can see it is skewed, R90, and now it's still flipped. Right mouse click, mirror on the x-axis, and here we have our Philips sign. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, maybe something like this. Let's see what it looks like. Ah, that's pretty good. Actually, that kind of looks like the original image as well. And the only thing I do not like is the fact that it's repeating right over here. So I'm going back into the shader editor, going to the image, going to set repeat to extend, and now this will be removed. Now if it happens that you get the texture all over this place, then just go into the UV editor, select all, you've probably unwrapped everything, and scale it into a black part except for these two. So then you will have the logo here, and all of this can be placed right in the black side, and then everything should be fine. So that's it for this video. By now you should have a very good model, some very good textures, and it will look even better in the next video where we are going to add some professional lighting to make it look like a product visualization render that could be used on a website, for example. So I'll see you in the next one. You learned how to create your own textures in Davinci Resolve. You learned how to texture procedurally in Blender. And most important of all, you learned how to do it professionally. Check out my Gumroad for free and paid assets. And in the next video, we're going to make a product lighting setup that is always going to work. Click here to watch that video next. Oh, and subscribe.